Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so delighted to have you here. It's been such a beautiful season here at the Phineas Wright House. I am staring out the window, looking at the beautiful, fresh snowfall, knowing that it's the last of its kind, I'm sure. Spring is certainly on its way, but I just think there's so much beauty in the seasons. And although they last just about as long as I would like them to, and find myself ready for the next one coming, it's to me such an opportunity to practice being present. So I can long for spring or summer or fall, but the fact will remain that there is ice on the driveway and snow everywhere else. And when I let myself be where my feet are and I appreciate what this season has for me and really the joy and the delight that comes from this pause, I feel like, I'm sure I told you this already, but I feel like I had an entire year of expansion in the month of January. And now here we are in March. February was fantastic. We hosted our first summit. We're increasing the amount of episodes that we share with you each week. All of these beautiful things are coming. We've launched the Say Yes Sisterhood, which is, oh my word, so fun. I'm just loving all of that. And I'm so grateful for winter because it allows me to be inside. It allows me to be at my desk. It allows me to be in flow and receiving all of these beautiful ideas and have the gift of time and margin with no outside chores to actually implement them and invite you to join me in the beautiful empire that we're building together. It's just, it's so yummy. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for holding space for me to share my dreams, to share what's on my heart. And in so doing, knowing that I am holding space for you and the dreams that are in your heart. And I believe that if they are in you, then they are for you. And I would really love to encourage you in those dreams. So if there is something on your heart that you just don't see how in the world you're ever going to get all the way over there from where you are, I invite you into the Say Yes Sisterhood. We meet every week, but we also have community in a private Facebook group, and we are encouraging each other. We are holding each other accountable. We are cheering each other on toward our next yes. And there's just something so beautiful about the momentum that heart-centered community brings. It is one of the key factors in my expansion and my trajectory, especially over the past 5 years. I have implemented a morning routine. I have invested in myself, and I have intentionally curated the community I desire. Those are the things that worked for me. I invite you to do all of those three things by joining us in the Say Yes Sisterhood. You are going to meet amazing, fabulous women. And you might meet someone fabulous like today's guest. Oh my goodness. I loved this conversation that I had with Davina Stanley. She's so cool. She's lived in so many different places. I love this global jet setting and trotting were coming to my mind all at the same time. And we almost made up a new word there. But I just love this global community that we are building here with the podcast, as well as inviting guests in that have all of these amazing experiences. I just had a conversation with a woman. You'll hear that episode in a few weeks, but she is a global venture capitalist. It's just so fun. Like, this is so great. But okay, back to today's guest, the amazing Davina Stanley. She helps executives better engage senior leaders and boards by mastering structured thinking techniques and stakeholder management strategies. She is an author, she is an entrepreneur, she is the founder of the Clarity First program. She's so cool. And we had this conversation right when she was landing in a brand new community. So, having this opportunity to reinvent herself as the woman that she is now, it's just such a gift. And we also don't have to move to have that opportunity to reinvent ourselves, to create new boundaries, to create a new way of thinking and a new way of experiencing life exactly where our feet are in this moment. There is so much goodness here for you. And I am cheering you on from here. Okay, I'm really eager to share this beautiful conversation with Davina Stanley. Davina, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and I'm excited about this conversation.
No, me too, Wendy. Me too. I love your house. I've been looking at it online. It looks gorgeous.
You're so fun. And I love your accent. Some of my favorite people share that same accent. So I'm super excited to hear how you got from Sydney to Seattle and all the stops in between. But I would love to start with the question I ask all of my guests, and that is, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Oh, I can tell you how I'm doing it today. If we're
Perfect.
on video, I can even show you.
Well,
Okay.
you and I are on video, yes, but please describe away.
I will describe away. So I have this gorgeous, soft, woolly cashmere jumper on that I bought as my treat to myself
It
on
is
top of my
beautiful.
yoga gear. So
Brilliant.
that's how I'm treating myself today, being very comfortable. I will probably put some proper clothes on for my client work this afternoon,
Or
but they
not.
wouldn't really know. I'd just feel better about that.
Isn't it funny? Like, we feel like we are showing up. I'm glad you chose comfort for this conversation
Oh,
because
definitely.
I want it to feel like we're just curled up in the beautiful lounge chairs of a gorgeous hotel lobby and having a great, expansive conversation. And I choose a hotel lobby, I think, instead of my
I
own
choose
living
your
room,
farm. I choose
right?
a I choose a farm stay at your farm,
Right. Well, I would
not a
love to
hotel.
have an expansive conversation there. I choose the library. That's probably my favorite room in the house,
Yes,
and it just calls me. It's an invitation to linger.
love it.
That's what that room
Love it.
is. It is a place where I used to do my morning practice, and the spiritual transformation that happened in that room changed my entire life. And it's also just a beautiful place that makes you think you should pour a bourbon and sit down with a good book and have a yummy blanket wrapped around your knees,
Yes,
and it's just settled in for the day. So I look forward to having that conversation with you in that room.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes, yes. So tell me about the road from Sydney to Seattle.
Well, the road from Sydney to Seattle was remarkably easy. It's two flights. It's very easy. The road getting there before that was kind of interesting, right? I said to you just before we started that I
Yes.
unwittingly signed up for quite an adventure when I married my husband at the very, old age of 24. And we married really young and decided that perhaps having children straight away was a bad thing to do because it just felt a bit early.
Sure.
And so we needed an adventure. And so he said, well, I've always wanted to live in Hong Kong. And that was kind of our deal, right? So
Oh,
I grew up on a farm in Australia, a potato farm, and went to a city called Adelaide to study kindergarten teaching, which was not my calling, let's just say that. And then came to Melbourne to teach, changed careers dramatically, and then married very quickly. So off we went to Hong Kong. And I think I might have been 26, maybe, with a couple of suitcases
oh my
and,
word.
a job. So that was good. And anyway, we lived there for 4.5 years. I My husband found me an advertisement for a fabulous job with McKinsey as a communication specialist. So you love books, I love reading and writing and things
Yes.
as well. So that's a real connection for us, I think. But, I grew up thinking anything was possible, but had no
Mm,
idea what that was. And it's so freeing, I think,
it is.
have that. And so anyway, moved to Hong Kong. Andrew saw this job ad and I thought, oh, that's cool. What's McKinsey? What's consulting? That's fun. Okay, let's try that. I got the job. Amazing. We lived there a bit longer. I had a baby by surprise, which was awesome. The best kind of surprise, I think.
Yes.
And then we moved to New York and I was 6 months pregnant with my second. Again, another happy surprise. And Andrew was traveling internationally every week. And
Mm,
so the full-time job offer with McKinsey just didn't seem sensible. So I bought a house, renovated it, lived there for a few years with my two young boys and my husband when he flew in and flew out. And then we moved to Tokyo a
wow.
couple of years later. And that started the big adventure because that year we lived in 4 countries, which was madness. Madness.
Oh my word.
Yes, that's it. Exactly. So I started working for McKinsey again in my, freelance. And I won't go into the details, but Andrew's the company, it was a big bank, just imploded. So anyway,
Mm,
we got shipped around. So that year we lived in Tokyo, Melbourne, or New York, first of all, Tokyo, Melbourne, and then Hong Kong again.
oh my
And
gosh.
so when we got there, I sort of said to Andrew, you know what? I'll stay here as long as you like, but don't put me into another international move again. I'm going back to Melbourne, Australia after this. That's it. And I would have been more flexible had we been there longer.
Sure.
Anyway, we got back to Melbourne. Through a series of events, we moved to Sydney a decade later, then we moved to Seattle. Now we're done. We bought a house last week. We're done.
Congratulations. And houses can also be sold. But
So I discovered.
I I love that you think you're done.
Oh,
And I love no, I mean, and I support you. And I love what this wanderlust and this saying yes to yourself, saying yes to your husband, saying yes to decisions that are outside of you but have an immense intimate impact on you, and how that is going to morph now that a moving company is not necessarily involved. But what do you imagine? I mean, let's just dreamscape for a minute.
it would be like living in the one spot.
Yes, because some people dream about the life you had, and now you're imagining a life that you are have the choice of everything in your closet every morning that you get dressed. That's phenomenal.
Mm.
What are your intentions? Tell me all the
Well,
things.
Well, first of all, I think I need to survive the next 5 months, which are endless traffic travel, which are we thought we'd buy a house after all that finished, you
Sure.
know, but we just found a beautiful home and went, oh, that's unusually beautiful, exactly where we want it. What do we do?
They
So,
find you.
exactly. So I'm going to move in and 2 days later fly to Australia for a month.
Okay. Perfect.
Well, yes. Anyway, then there's some more travel. So I'm sort of thinking, okay, when I get back from all that madness, which will be March,
Yes.
it'll be 5 months really.
Right.
When we get back from that madness, it's like, okay, now I really hope in my ins and outs, I start to get to know my neighbors a little bit, just at least to introduce and maybe have a Christmas party or something like that, just
Fun.
putting the feelers out. And we know some people in our neighborhood, so that's good. But I think what's going to be very interesting is just thinking about what does it mean to nestle into a community. And we've always built communities around us. When you move like
Sure.
we have, you become a machine at that. You become very, very good at that. And we are. So that's good. It's the sense of longevity. And what does that mean? We have a
Yeah.
son now who lives in Seattle. Also, we have another son in New York. Who knows whether they will stay in those places or whether they will move? We don't know. Um, but just, okay, how do we really go the extra mile to build those very long-term friendships? I've had that intention before. I think the
Right.
possibility of that landing and lasting is going to be different this time. It's a much greater chance that that will happen.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I'm sort of had that thought when I woke up this morning. I wonder what that's going to be like. That really nestling in to deeper friendships that are persistent, not just over time, because I have so many friends where, I'm going to London in January, I'll see my
Right.
brother, but I'll also see one of my very best friends that I haven't seen
Sure.
for a few years. We'll just pick up where we left off. I
Right.
have friends like that everywhere. But that's a different kind of friendship, I suspect, to
Right.
the, you know, can you pick my kids up from school today because I'm in a pickle?
Mm-hmm.
The and I hope to have friends of all ages. We tend to do that. So that's a possibility. Or,
Sure.
could you help me get to the hospital because of blah? And I think living a life where I'm not traveling as much for work, although maybe that's starting again. COVID's over now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I certainly don't want to be traveling more than once a month. I used to travel every week and I don't want to go
Mm.
back to that. So that sense of the possibility of helping out, it's not as exciting maybe. So I think there's something about relationships which when you get deeper, get harder. And
Mm.
possibly, does this sound awful but more boring? You know?
Right. Right. I mean, and I think, maybe instead of boring, it could be familiar. It could
Mm,
be, but certainly the boring is a good word compared to how exotic and exciting and how much
mm,
momentum was it physical momentum
yeah.
was in your former experience. I also think it's amazing, you've built some practices and some superpowers in creating community wherever you are. You and Andrew together probably make friends when you guys go on vacation because you have these practices, and it will be interesting to see how they've continued to morph because you're not 24 and you're not.
Oh, sadly not.
No, beautifully so.
I actually really like being older. It's
Right.
fine.
It's
I'm
so great.
teasing.
Right. And things, and
Mm,
you have different desires and
mm,
intentions, and you
mm, mm.
probably choose. It'll be interesting to see how you choose this new set of friends
Mm.
because the goal is different. Like
Very, very,
you're interviewing like, are you the person I'm going to call? Are
yeah,
you
no,
going to?
that's right. That's right. And it's when I say boring, I guess I've been married for a long time
Sure.
too, right?
Yeah.
Familiar, you are so right, is a much better word. It's not as exciting. The newness isn't there, but
Right.
there's a beauty, I think, and I'm, looking forward to around really knowing people very, very well
Yeah.
with, and I've got friends where that's the case, but
Mhm.
with the thought that, we're at a new stage in our life, and I think life at this stage has all sorts of different kinds of challenges to it.
Right.
There's the risk of health challenges and all sorts of things. So being vulnerable to supporting other people, hopefully other people,
Right. You
right?
will. You will. It's your intention. Yes.
Hopefully it's not being a recipient of that
Yeah.
help just yet, right?
Right.
But really, just the day to day, the familiar, you know,
Right.
those things.
Tradition and building habits. And
Mm,
it's so interesting. When I grew up in California, but all of my mom's family lives in Massachusetts. So when we would go back east to visit, I was just enthralled with not only the natural beauty of the space
mhm.
compared
Yeah.
to Southern California, where people love it there. I just was recently in LA and people love it there. And I just see all the reasons why I'm happy I don't live there anymore. Just there's concrete and stucco and sidewalks and all those things don't delight me. And when we would come back east and think, oh my gosh, even the freeway is beautiful here.
Yes.
And
Oh, it so is. I've been
right.
marveling, and I know this will come out later, this episode, but
Yes.
for me, coming from Australia here, having lived in New York before, just north of New York, and discovering the beauty of what you call fall, we call
Yes.
autumn. I
Yes.
had a sprinkling of that where I grew up, where my father lives now, when I was a young
Okay.
child, but just the beauty of, oh my goodness, driving along the road and where we've chosen to live, it is spectacular.
Mm,
The drive down just the suburban streets before you
right.
get to the parkway and so on. You're driving up to the mountains. We're like 30 minutes from a ski place, which is part of the idea. I
Perfect.
know, how exciting. And it's just magnificent. It just lifts your spirit, doesn't it?
It really
Yeah.
does. And it
Yeah.
feels otherworldly because it is
Mm-hmm.
so different from what
Mm-hmm.
I experienced as a child. And one of the things that also drew me in were how many of my people
Mm-hmm.
live there. Because my mom is one of six kids, but she was
Oh,
the
wow.
only one to have moved away. So in
Yes.
California, it was just my brother and I and
Yeah.
Disneyland. And you could golf on Christmas Day, which my cousins thought was amazing. And I thought, no, I don't want to golf. I want to
Yes.
sit by the fire and watch the snow
And read
falling
a book.
and read a book on it in
Yes.
my library, right? All the
Yes.
good things. So I so craved tradition. I so craved this is what we do on Christmas Eve. This is what we do on these particular
Yes.
moments in time. And I love that, like you and what you're about to move into, that was so much of my migration to the East
Yeah.
Coast and
Mm.
anchoring in tradition and
Mm-hmm.
making new traditions, but
Mm-hmm.
also the beauty of how fast time seems to move
Oh, yeah.
because of the seasons. So in Southern California, it's just sunny or it's
All the
raining,
time. Sydney is largely and like
right?
moderate temperature most of the
Right.
time, which is so pleasant. And I was walking out in the rain yesterday. It's sunny today, but it was rainy and grey yesterday. And it's like, oh,
Right.
It is actually quite nice stomping through the leaves when it's raining, and it
Mhm.
wasn't raining
I
hard. It
agree.
doesn't rain that hard here usually.
Yeah, just to mess
But
up your hair.
yeah, well, that's what
Yeah.
hoods are for.
That's right.
I
That's
got
right.
lessons in coats and
That's right.
hoods when I moved here. There are special, I have like, I don't know, 7, 8 outdoor
That's
coats
right.
now, right?
That's right. All for a different level of rainfall.
And snowfall. Did you know what
Yes.
the fur is for around a coat?
Is that so the snow hits that
Doesn't
and
get
sticks
in
to
your
that and
eyes.
doesn't get your glasses?
I know.
So
Exactly.
good. It's so good. And I love for me, and I hope that this is your experience as well, it just helps me practice being present
Mm-hmm.
because there is so much change.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much change
Mm-hmm.
on my property, on a farm
Mm-hmm.
anyway. The seasons bring a whole new slew of
Yes.
chores and movement in life, but there's also just so much that's happening, and I am
Mm-hmm.
approaching every day with curiosity and
Mm-hmm.
discovery, and it's just really being present. And I
Mm-hmm.
think finding those people that are having a similar experience, spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
that also live in your neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
that's golden.
It's beautiful. No, it is beautiful. And yeah, no, I'm really, really looking forward to it. I'm very sad that I'll have only 2 nights in my house before I fly to Australia, but I will be back and,
And you'll have thousands of nights.
oh, exactly. And, I think it's just this whirlwind of things for the next few months. My husband loves to ski. There were 2 rules when we got married, right? You can
Perfect.
learn a little bit about him just by the idea that there are, rules.
Yes. Have a
And
passport
one
and yeah,
was move to Hong Kong one day because he really wanted to do that. And he'd actually planned to move before we got married, before we met, actually. And, the world finances got messy. And so that
sure.
upended itself. So, that was a legitimate thing, you know.
Yes.
Delayed my move, not, and I happen to have met you in between. So, are you on board with
Right.
the plan? So that's a fine thing. But the other thing was that, well, you've been skiing once, haven't you? Yes. I hope you like it because we can do it a lot.
Oh,
And
okay.
I know. And so he actually, when we were looking to move stateside, our kids are here, they both work in AI. And so it just seemed, well, we're entitled to apply for citizenship. We really should because, you know, it makes sense if our kids are going to be.
Yes.
And it worked for work too. But anyway, he said, how about we move to Whistler? That's my happy place.
Oh,
How about
it's
we live in Whistler?
beautiful.
Oh, I know. We've been there a lot. And it's a really easy place to get to from Australia to
Hmm.
ski, and the skiing's amazing. Anyway, and I sort of said, look, I don't think I want to be 80 tottering around on the ice to go buy my milk.
There you go.
I just don't think that's
True.
what I want. And I'd
And
like
building community in a place that's a resort
in a
town
resort
it's
town.
too
Exactly.
transient.
And in a lot of the places we've lived, we've been very intransient communities, which
Right.
is fun, but really wearing. And,
Yes.
so consciously making a choice not to have that.
Yes.
And we chose Seattle because it's close. He needs a humid
Hmm.
environment for his health. And so it's humid. And it's West Coast, which works for both of our businesses and
I
just.
giggle because Seattle's humidity and Massachusetts humidity are not the same.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, yes, he needs a
Yes.
humid environment.
It's a
Perfect.
humid environment. And then, by happy circumstance, I met somebody at a breakfast, and I'd heard about this place called Snoqualmie Pass, which is for skiing.
Yes.
So we chose Seattle as a compromise, an international sort of city and, close to skiing. And so I met this fellow at a breakfast, and I said, oh, so where do you live? And he said, oh, Snoqualmie. And I was like, oh, you must have been up at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning to get here for this
Right.
breakfast before 7 in the morning. Like, are you crazy or
Yes.
what? It's not that good a breakfast. It is good, but it's not that
Yes.
good. And he said, oh, no, 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 no. It's I live in Snoqualmie town. I was like, oh, he said, well, come visit, come have a look. And we did, and we just fell in love with it, you know.
It's so stunning. How I've been to the falls.
Yeah, we live within our new place is within, it's like across the forest on the edge
Oh.
from the falls, 2 miles maybe
And
from.
isn't that just a beautiful sentence?
Oh,
Across the forest on the edge.
but you know the fun thing,
Sold.
you know exactly, exactly. And you know the funnest thing is learning all these things, like you shouldn't put your bin, your trash, we call them bins, but you call them
Sure.
carts, I think,
Or
out
trash cans. Yeah.
before. You don't put them out the night before. Okay, why not? That's awkward. I work nights. I don't want to get up at early to put them out. No, no, no. You don't put them out before 7 in the morning. Before morning up. Why not? Well, a little while ago, our other new neighbors, they didn't listen to us when we said that. So here's what happened. We had trash strewn all over the place the next day, and our fence was broken down because not one but two bears
Oh my
decided to have
word.
a go at their bin, and they were using it as a weapon, and so they bashed it into the fence.
Oh my word.
You talk about seasonal things, like there is bear
Wow.
season. And I learned a new term, which I think doesn't apply to my new town, applies to another neighborhood, but I might be really wrong. I'm certain it doesn't apply to my new town, where my new friend said to me, "Oh, that neighborhood you're looking at, another one. Oh, it's so beautiful and it's so walkable." And I'm thinking, well, of course it's walkable. It's flat. I mean,
Sure.
what on earth are you thinking? I didn't say this. This was just in my head.
Right.
And she goes, "Oh, you don't need bear spray there." And I was like, "Oh,
Oh
that's
gosh,
a new
safe to walk. Safe to walk. Oh my word.
that takes things to a whole new level,
Right. I
doesn't it?
thought she
That's a new
meant there
criteria.
wasn't a coffee place close by.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yes, we have bears. There are bear sightings, but they're
Yeah.
usually, getting in somebody's bird feeder or something.
Right. Yeah.
I have not had any bear experience.
Well, I have evidence from my new house. There's cameras outside. The
Wow.
lady who's selling it to us, the couple who's selling to us, is meticulous every way. So I
Perfect.
just want you to imagine all of the things that might mean and then just add some. Okay. So we asked for the internal cameras to be removed, just saying.
Sure.
But the
Yeah.
external cameras, we thought, well, that's okay. That's useful to be fun to see the
Right.
wildlife.
Yeah.
And so she sent me a little video of a bear over the summer walking down the street.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't expect that. So,
Wow.
there we go.
It's
We'll just
interesting. Well,
keep our eyes open for the black bears. Thankfully, black bears.
right. Oh my gosh. Okay. Be safe, Queen. My word. You might find yourself a fan of moving around again.
Well, I hope not.
I don't think so.
I
No,
don't think so.
I think that it sounds like staying in one place there is going to provide a lot of adventure
Oh, I
and a
think
lot of unknown and some
yes,
of those things that kind
yes.
of travel scratches that itch for us, but you've
And
got it all
beautiful
around you.
fireplaces. I'm going to have 3 fireplaces in my home. One of them will be in my office. We were saying before that, I was laughing about my setup here in this rental house and how I don't have enough room for my things. I'm going to have a fireplace in my very own study, not a desk that I bought because it fitted into a nook in the kitchen in another house.
Exactly.
No.
Oh, it's so fun. You will
Mm,
not only be unpacking boxes, but unpacking your life.
mm, mm, exactly.
I love that for you. That's amazing. How is this going to impact how you spend your days now?
Beautiful question. So a little bit, my days now are a little bit in flux, but if we think of, when I'm nestled into the house, I think there are a few things changing in my business which will affect
Mhm.
that. So at the moment, I work for a lot of Australian clients. So I work evenings, which actually
Sure.
in winter is really quite lovely, I'm discovering. And so, I run online training programs and I teach executives to get to the point, particularly around writing for senior leaders and boards to get decisions. And so that's a fun thing to do.
Yes.
So I've been online for a long time. I'd like to continue that for the most part, but I am craving getting out and being with people a little bit more. So that's part of the craziness over the next few months is I'm going to London and South Africa and then Houston, Texas, all in short order to do some face-to-face work. So I think there's going to be a little bit more of that sprinkled in, hopefully mainly
Right.
within the US. But doing some work in the US means that I probably won't have my whole sort of morning to early afternoon free to flex. Do I work? Do
Right.
I do yoga? Do I do TRX? Do I
Yeah.
walk? Do I do those things? So I think that's going to become a little bit more higgledy-piggledy,
Mm-hmm.
which is okay. I
Right.
want that because I want to have some more US clients and ideally Seattle,
Sure.
sort of clients where I can go and spend some time with them in their office. So I think it's going to be a little bit higgledy-piggledy, which will keep things interesting, you know?
Right. I mean, that's another beautiful aspect of landing somewhere
Hmm,
that you're going to put down roots is
hmm.
that you there it's not the same thing every day. Even because you have to have so much structure when you're on the move. Otherwise, you won't remember what city your dry cleaning's in.
Oh, you're so right. And, I got myself when I was flying weekly, I was in a
Sure.
habit where I still use some of these habits. It's, how do you, and I love the name of your podcast, how do you say yes to yourself? There are some simple things to do to reduce the cognitive load,
Yes.
that kind of madness. And simple things like I sit as close to the front, usually in economy for, short flights, but if I walk down the aisle, it's on the right-hand side as close to the
Okay.
front as I can get. That's my seat.
Perfect.
When I was traveling in and out of the same city all the time, I would stay at the same place. And I used to stay at this beautiful old club. It was cheap and
Nice.
I had access and it was lovely. And so I would stay in the same room because I would know in advance. So I'd stay in the
Right.
same room and the same staff are there and I could have some banter with Neville at the front desk
Mm.
who was lots of fun.
He
you know
sounds like it.
oh, he was fabulous, is fabulous. What am I saying? Was he's an older gentleman who'd been at the club for I don't know how long, decades. And
Mm,
we would discuss the merits of lemonade or sour cream in scone recipes, or he would tell
fantastic.
me naughty stories like, oh, Mrs. And he would put on that proper English sort of
Yes.
accent because he was being the butler.
Yes.
And he would say, oh, Mrs. Stanley, I'm writing a book. I said, oh, Neville. He said, yes. And I'm going to get everyone to pay me to leave them out of my story. And then he would proceed to tell me a story, which was really naughty.
Yes, that you would
And
pay to not be in the book.
oh, he said, oh, Mrs. Stanley, we discovered some lingerie the other weekend in somebody's room. Now, I know that gentleman's wife. She's rather larger than that lingerie would suit. So we thought we'd best send it home to him.
Oh my gosh. He
True or
is
no?
mischievous. Oh my gosh.
But, just making those, connections, but also just making those routines.
Right.
So I think doing those things, flying the same airline because obviously you get the points,
Right.
but you have, okay, so you've got the points, you can go in there, the easy lane,
Yes.
you get your favorite seat, you do the things and just create familiarity. So I won't need as much of that sort of
Right.
routine, I don't think. So maybe it'll free
Wow.
me up to be more spontaneous. I don't know.
Right. I
I
love this reinvention of yourself. And
Mm,
I love that you are even gradually getting in there. So
mm,
you'll have your address, you've spent a couple nights there, and then you're away for several months. And I love that for you. It's all so much informed discovery.
I guess. I guess. Yes. Yes. So it's the adventure continues, right? It's just a very different kind of adventure. And yeah, well, it'll be fun, I think. It'll be
It
fun.
will. And I'm
Mm.
looking forward to hearing, the new companies that you're working with and
Mm.
how you are helping them. How did you get started doing that?
So I guess the short version is that I joined McKinsey in Hong Kong and learned a discipline called structured thinking and specialized in that. It's a way of organizing your ideas. And so there's not that many people who really nerd out on it. And I had the very great fortune of being evaluated by the founder of it. Her name's Barbara Minto. She developed it at McKinsey. And then I was working with some people who wanted to represent her in Australia. So I was approved by her. So that gives me a bit of credibility, I
Mhm.
suppose, in what I do. And because it's quite a narrow niche, I don't think Barbara's approved anybody else because
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know, maybe nobody else has asked, truly. Um, but having that narrow niche has been very helpful.
Absolutely.
Because of this suitcase sort of a life that we lived after I had that time with McKinsey in Hong Kong, and then because my skills were rare, I was able to pick up freelancing for the firm for a long time, like 15 years. And so I worked for them out of all sorts of Greater China, Tokyo, Australia, US offices. And I just found that this way of working was really compatible with doing interesting and challenging things while being a mum.
Mm.
And having
Mm.
moved so much, it was really important to provide that sense of routine for my boys. And, that was really, really important. So the ability to juggle that, you know, was really important. And so it just made it an easy way to work, right?
Right.
And so how did it practically happen? Well, there was the McKinsey link. And then I partnered up with somebody once I decided it, we were settled and I wanted to do a bit more work. And we took on a project teaching lawyers how to get to the point so that somebody could read the legal advice within 30 seconds, get the
Mm.
general idea, not read it all, but get the general idea within 30 seconds. And that just kicked off a whole lot of other organic opportunities. And I had the freedom, I suppose, to allow it to grow organically. Um, and as my boys got older, it sort of just grew in parallel. And I really like exploring and getting better at doing things. My motivation is how do I get better at that? How do I
Right.
help people more? How do I do a better job? How do I, get better? So that's been my motivation. And it's just given me a chance to continue that striving to get better. And so I wrote two books recently in that spirit. You get a sense of madness from the way I've lived my life. Writing two
Right.
books at once is mad. But
At the
yeah,
same time you wrote them.
I did. I did. And
You're amazing.
no, I'm crazy, I think.
Well, you're really good at being crazy then.
But I started writing one, and I wanted it to be a companion to another book I'd written with somebody else years ago, and it just wasn't a good fit. So I was like, well, part of what I do is to teach people to provide a cohesive and coherent story, and make it compelling, but make it cohesive. And so to do that, I really felt I needed the full operating system, if you like. So I was
Sure.
writing a book for leaders to help them set their teams up so they could write the papers that reports, PowerPoints, whatever, that the leaders don't need to spend their nights and weekends rewriting.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Oh, it's a little bit of the say yes to, right?
Right.
Say yes to something difficult. It's not easy to really do that, but it's very possible if you put
Yes.
a couple of disciplines in place. And so, writing that because it was a method that I was baking into a lot of my clients' workplaces, and I was seeing some real changes there, board directors coming back and saying, oh my gosh, it takes me 10% of the time to read and understand the papers compared to
Right.
before, right?
Yay.
Huge difference, freeing
Yes.
up their mental capacity to actually engage in the content rather than write all these
Right.
questions down to take to the meeting to say, well,
Right.
what on earth does this mean? Like, what's this
Yes.
for? I don't understand. And
Right.
spending that really expensive time
Yes.
trying to understand something rather than trying to make the most of it.
Right.
So, that's where I was at. And then the way I work is to offer people, the simplest term is shortcuts, but patterns in the
Right.
storytelling so that they can, instead of laying out all their information and then thinking, oh, how do I make sense of all of this and pull it into a shape? I found that intuitively, because I could do it just because I had been doing it for so long, I could listen
Right.
about this story and I could say, oh, well, there are three ways you could tell that. Here's some skeletons. One, two, three. Pick one. And they go, oh, yeah, easy. That one. Right. Let's do it. And so I built a way of helping them choose without me being in the room what framework to use. Okay, we can shortlist it to two or three, or it's obvious which one, but we can make a decision around that skeleton quite quickly and then fill it in. It's much faster, much, much faster.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And
Yes.
so, helping leaders see all of that was great. But then, of course, their team need to be able to see it too. So,
Right.
Elevate is for leaders wanting to elevate the thinking skills on their team so they can do this. And then Engage is the companion for the team members. And I have it as a book and I have it as an online course where people can learn the approach, get the decision tree, learn to pick their pattern, as I call them, and then iterate the high level messaging so that they're not stuck in the weeds,
Right.
iterating with track changes, rewriting,
Mm-hmm.
and stuck in the detail, right? So you're sort of stuck with, oh, Mary doesn't like that word, or
Right.
think that happened in June, not July. Or no, 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 it was not 12.2 million, it was 12.5. When in actual fact, the 12.5 million is completely irrelevant because you should be talking about the 50 million over here. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
Right.
get up to the high level. People talk about getting into the helicopter and thinking about the big picture and all that.
Yes.
But how do you actually do that? It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
So providing people with a method for telling complex stories means they've got to collaborate better. And that's where the magic is. So,
Absolutely.
hence two books, because you've got simplistically two roles, really more, but simplistically two roles, but certainly one process of collaboration around these really important decisions. Of course, my husband was determined I would finish it before I moved to America and it would all be, done and new foot and off we go. It didn't happen like that. It took another
He's
9
so
months.
cute with his plans.
Isn't he?
He always has a plan.
So cute with his plans. And
Yes.
but the beauty of it, I think, was that the second book, I needed to restructure it. I needed to be true to my integrity of, what I teach to the
Correct.
best of my ability. I'm sure it could be improved, but, to the best of my ability at that time. And it gave me a really wonderful project to work on once we moved here and great
Right.
flexibility, because I had work to do for clients, but the transition and the economy was a little soft at that time too. So I like the ebb and flow of that, of just
Mm-hmm.
having creative projects that I can use to help other people while also hopefully getting better at what I do and increasing the value I bring to make things a little bit better for people.
Absolutely. And to do that in real time. You
Mm,
were implementing what you're writing about.
Mm.
And it's kind of like this,
I think there's a synchronicity, if that's not
right?
your word, right?
Yes,
There's a
yes, it's
consistency
happening
around
together.
it.
You are,
Yeah.
it's on the job training, as
Oh,
it were. You're
yes.
solving problems and you're using the same words of the people that are going to be reading it. When
Mm,
you're using their words to describe their own pain
mm,
point,
mm.
of course it
Yeah,
lands. And I love that you are really transforming the culture of these companies to be collaborative and not in a way that strips any level of their voice, but it really shows how it works all together and how it is not a blanket approach because it's not specialized, but how it's a universal approach
it
to
is.
all the things that we are working on together. And look around, if there's more than two people in this company,
Yeah.
we are collaborating.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
really, I really think that's so beautiful, and that you were able to write to both audiences at the same time. I don't think it could have been done as well if you did it separately, because I feel like one concept, you do need to flesh it out for
Hmm.
both people at the same time, because then you can get excited over here and like, oh, but how is that going to translate here? And
Yes.
you would have had so many revisions and edits
Correct.
to whichever one you chose.
It started to go there. And, I had a publisher working with me. And I think the interesting journey there was the work that I really wanted to use the techniques that I teach in writing the books. And I guess the way I teach people to structure their messaging into a hierarchy so that when they present their information, whether it's an email or something much bigger, like a book, anything on that spectrum, is that it's skimmable. So,
Mm,
right? So you can only make it skimmable really when you have a short introduction, a single message, and then supporting points underneath that are connected to each other in a way that's cohesive.
right.
And so I needed to play that through in my book. And publishers are accustomed to writing with a flow.
Mm-hmm.
They're not accustomed to the depth of rigor that we apply. And we use this method as a thinking tool to flush out what we're really saying. You can mask over all sorts of things with charisma, with beautiful
Mm-hmm.
words, with something that just seems plausible because it flows, right?
Right.
But when you actually interrogate something, an idea, a proposition, a request, an update, which decision makers have to do if they're going
Mm-hmm.
to do their job justice, then a lot of that falls apart because the logic underpinning it just isn't there. The synthesis, the way the dots are connected,
Sure.
isn't there. And so that was an interesting journey also, particularly because I wrote these broadly on my own, you know, and I found that much, much harder than collaborating. I collaborated on my previous book,
Sure.
and that was a very different sort of experience. So,
Well, the message of the book is effective collaboration, and you
yes,
had to
I
do
know.
it by yourself.
So it's a bit of an oxymoron. And so I did have people who were reading in the background and
Mhm.
reviewing and so on. The challenge, and I think this is a real challenge for people in organizations too, when you write something hefty, you have to have someone with a deeply vested interest in it to give you real feedback that's useful. And, feedback truly is a gift as much as that's a
Mhm.
neat sort of thought. It really is. And so, finding people who have a vested interest in you or your message to actually invest in when you're writing two books at once is, I don't know, I think that's a unicorn, really. So that was just something that I had to wrestle with, and just
Right.
partly why I needed to take the time And, I was experimenting with things with my clients and getting feedback on the actual substance, but not on the way it was conveyed all that much because the feedback was all far too nice.
Right. I think it's so important, regardless what if you're writing 2 books at the same time or you're a solopreneur that wants to scale into an empire, but she has
Mm,
no employees.
mm,
I also need feedback. I need an advisory board that is deeply vested in this work.
mhm.
And it's really important, regardless of how many people or what your organization is going for. And it's interesting, even just as I think about how that ties back to what we talked about at the beginning of our
Mm,
conversation,
mm,
in how you are intentionally building this next level of community in your new space. It
mm.
is, I mean, I don't want to use the word vetting people,
Oh,
but
no. It's
you,
like dating friends, isn't it?
it
When you move somewhere
is.
new and,
And you're not 24. It's like, I'm not looking for someone to go out with on Friday night if we don't have plans. Like, I'm
yes,
looking for depth
yes.
and investment and that will be reciprocal.
That, yes to all of that. And, I think the challenge that comes with that, when you are in a transient sort of environment,
Right.
um, you do the dating thing, you can filter very easily because things are moving very fast for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And, we're getting very personal now, but you can have the big group only friends really easily.
Right. Yeah.
People that you like, but perhaps, maybe they want more of a friendship than you do.
Hmm.
And so, to decide how to really gently not include people,
Yeah.
I think becomes as much as the decision as who to include. When you're actually physically settled in a place, I
Right.
think there has to be more give and more flex around that. Um, and just I think maybe when you live that really transient life, I hope we haven't been selfish, but I think there's more possibility for that.
Sure. And maybe just self-serving,
Mm,
but there is a healthy selfishness in the idea of knowing yourself and
mm,
knowing what's
mm,
important and
mm.
knowing, having certainty of this friendship is actually, I'm going to have to move you to the category of big groups,
I
because
know.
I care more about me and my experience
Yes.
than how you might misinterpret my decision.
But you know what else I find too? I'm an introvert. I love
Hmm.
spending time with people, but I have to retreat. And
Yeah.
so I have an assistant who's been with me for a decade who is just magnificent. Okay. And she manages me so much better than I manage me.
Perfect.
I want to help. I want to do the things.
Right.
But I've learned, particularly during the COVID experience where I was online facilitating from 2017. And
Right.
so when COVID happened and people wanted team on, offsite,
Right.
on-site, online sites, whatever you call them, they wanted learning experiences as a way of keeping their team together
Sure.
and so on. It was like I really learned how much I couldn't do.
Mm.
And during that season, of course, we weren't being social. So I could get away
Right.
with it a little bit. So I
Right.
have to put a lid on how
Hmm.
much I am with other people for work
Yeah.
in order to have capacity,
Right.
emotional capacity to actually invest in my friendships
Yeah.
outside the business. And part of my goal in being online and having individual products like books a little bit, but more the online courses. And, now I'm really wanting to scale those is to help people in a way that doesn't have me in a room with them as
Right.
much
Right.
because otherwise I just don't have the energy to
Yeah.
invest in the meaningful relationships. And so, back in 2017, I was thinking, I've done everything I can to optimize the heck out of my travel to minimize
Right.
the impost on me, you know,
Right.
time of day that I fly, the airline, the seat, the location, all of those things. I optimized everything I could do with that. And then, okay, but it's no longer enough. I've got teenage kids, you know,
Mhm.
what do I do? So, you know, getting then to a place where, you know, I can optimize for a different thing.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. And it's just, I think you can assume that there are a lot more introverts that are in your future. Sometimes I think I'm extrovert, so I understand. I have a grasp of the English language, so I understand what you say is a challenge for you, but I don't
Yeah.
have experiential.
No, but you still love your library. But
Yes, I
you still
do.
talk about retreating. Everyone has a point where they need to
Oh,
retreat, their
absolutely.
library or wherever their happy place is.
Yes.
Just, I think, being aware of how much time I need in that place so
Right?
I can, you know, invest in my friendships and I can invest in my clients as well and really show up in a way
Yes.
without damaging my health.
And knowing that that intention that you give to yourself is going to be in service to your new friend group as well,
Hmm,
because it's going to either model for them what
correct.
they don't think they're allowed to implement because they think they're the only introvert in the world. And it's just an exciting new adventure. I can't wait to hear
It
more
is.
about.
It is. You know, the other thing I think about modeling too, and this is a cultural thing for me to learn a little bit more about here in the United States, you know, the culture of work is more intense here. And, you know, at my not so young age, I think, you know, I want to keep working. I don't want to stop working, right? But I have to keep it going in a way that's sustainable.
Right,
And I think that's a little different than the way a lot of people think about work.
right,
You know, it's I work and then I stop. I
right,
tried retirement for a little bit. I'm not good at it, you know.
right,
I'm not good
right.
at it. So how do I, you know, make a sustainable?
It's just balance,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
balance.
think that idea of balance is really important.
It is. Oh my goodness, Davina, I have loved this conversation. I loved all the directions it went. I wish we had more time. You're so delightful. I would love to have you back after you land and hear how all of these fabulous things have played out. But until then, please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, where they can get their hands on the book, all the good things.
Oh, thank you so much, Wendy. I've loved our conversation too. So my website is clarityfirstprogram.com, and you can learn about my new books, Elevate and Engage, my online course. The latest one is Engage to match the book. And I've got lots of free things there too, if you want a bit of a taste about how I think about business communication. You know, I'd love to help. So thank you for the opportunity for the conversation. I've loved it.
My pleasure. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.